Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm John Barban. With me is Geoff Dover, and let's talk football.
We're talking undrafted free agents today in the NFL. There's a couple things. There's more than you would think. There was like many undrafted free agents who were signed. And based on the past history, some of these could be potentially impact players. So it's a good idea to look at them today. And you had some thoughts on this.
Yeah, and it's way more than you think. There's significantly more undrafted free agents signed each year after the draft than there are draft picks. So what's it, 262 in the draft?
Something like that?
Yeah, well, yeah, because Purdy they have hats that say like Mr. 262, like Mr. Irrelevant.
Mhm.
So that's the last pick. But then there's somewhere between 300 to 500 undrafted free agents each year that at least get signed. And even by the time we're recording this, some of them have already been released. But they at least get signed and have a shot to show something in the summer. And then obviously trying to get to preseason to, make the 53-man roster, but get to that layer of cuts. And
that's part of the reason why I'm wearing the Ravens today, because they drafted like 10 or 11 people total because they had some extra picks in the 6th round or whatever, but they just signed 23 undrafted free agents. And some of them a lot of them are names you would recognize, like quality college players, like, and there's a reason why they weren't drafted. Like they're not predicted to do well, but that hasn't stopped some really good people in the past being undrafted free agents and making it in the NFL.
Right. And with that said, before we get into the ones we think might pop this year, or the ones to maybe pay attention to, we got a little list here of notable undrafted free agents who've had legitimate, serious NFL careers. Some of these are Hall of Famers. Do you want me to start here?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just pulled up a top 30 on NFL.com. You can find a bunch of different lists. So, and I'm sure I won't be missing a few, but there's enough here to get the idea across. So Wes Welker, undrafted.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's a serious one. Now, there's a couple really old ones that I'm not going to cover because they're way before our time, like in the 50s and 60s. Also, the draft, everything was not quite the same back then as far as how it is now.
So the one that jumped up to me was Priest Holmes. So he was a really good running back for Kansas City for many years when, and it was really, that was someone you had to account for in that team. It was at multiple Pro Bowls. It was undrafted. And I was trying to, with all this list, I can't stop myself from saying, like, how could this person not be drafted? Right. But he was at Texas, and it was behind Ricky Williams. Was it that one? Was it?
They were there together.
Right. So like that. So that can happen, you can be on a team, but it won't happen anymore now, like in college, because of the transfer and NIL and stuff. But back then you could be a couple of really good people at the same position, and you just might not get as much time or something like that. But I thought that was a good example.
And it's not position specific. So, for example, Larry Little, Nate Newton, and Jason Peters. I think all three are Hall of Fame O-linemen, all of them undrafted.
That's crazy. Nate Newton is specifically.
I know, like, when I saw that list. Yeah.
He was dominant with the Cowboys. And
totally.
It was, and I was one of my favorite things with him. It was on one of the documentaries or something like that. And he showed up to camp like this is like 7 or 8 years into his career, because he's most of them are like, they're big, but they're also like pretty overweight, but which is sort of like not bad because you need it for blocking. But you don't want to be like completely obese, because you still got to move around. So he finally decided it was at the point of his career where, like, it'd be good if he lost like 20 or 30 pounds, like just because he's still good and still big. But anyway, and they asked him how he did it. And because he used to eat like 2 double cheeseburgers, like with fried eggs and stuff on both. And then he's like, I just get 1 now instead of 2. That was like his big secret.
Should have published a book about it.
And there was Deion Sanders was walking with him, and he's like, oh, brand new Nate, look at him. He's he's like half the size, so anyway.
Maybe take a few snaps at tight end.
So speaking of tight ends, that's a great transition, Barban. We're a professional podcast.
That's right.
Antonio Gates, undrafted free agent, like one of the best tight ends of all time
ever.
And again, not a lot of football experience, probably the knock on him before he was drafted, but like an incredible athlete because he played basketball. So
it's just unbelievable. I guess I have to give a shout out to Joe Jacoby as well, another offensive lineman who's on this list. Adam Vinatieri, one of the best field goal kickers ever.
How's that possible?
I don't know.
I know that kickers don't always get drafted, but I still like.
I get, what? Maybe that's it. Maybe they just don't get drafted, and the odds are one of the undrafted ones becomes one of the best ever. James Harrison.
Yeah, I know that's that. Well, just the last thing about Adam Vinatieri, like
Yeah.
the other, and again, like he came from South Dakota State, but I mean that wouldn't matter. Like if you can kick
No.
40 or 50-yard field goals, like that'd be the one. It's not like you're a left tackle at South Dakota State and you're
Yeah.
versus someone that went to LSU. Like that's you can if you're a good kicker, it doesn't matter. So that was
Yeah, apparently.
actually that's a good reason why there's a kid from Montreal that's going to be kicking for Florida in the fall. And it's it's a good
interesting.
example of it doesn't matter who's blocking because the people here in Montreal were not like high school players in the States. Anyway,
All right.
yeah, James Harrison, that's a good one.
Yeah, that one's outstanding. Rod Smith is one of the best wide receivers with the Broncos.
Yeah.
Let me see what Tony Romo.
Yeah, which is surprising, right?
Yeah.
So, but again, from a smaller school, the number one, I've looked at a few lists.
Yeah.
Most of them cite Kurt Warner is the number one undrafted free agent, just because he's like if his won a Super Bowl, or
been to a couple, one for
something
sure.
like that. So, but and his story was pretty crazy, like the background, so much so that they made a movie of it. But that's rare, right? Like that's that type of. That's happened like once, which is why they made a movie about it. But these other players, like that's every position almost, right? Like that's tight end, running back, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker. Like
hang on, let's get to defensive line. The best one, John Randle.
Yeah, that's crazy.
He
was great. I loved watching him play.
Yeah. For our younger listeners, he's sort of Aaron Donald before Aaron Donald.
Yes, exactly. That's a great
small,
comparison.
But like just a ball, like small for a D tackle.
Yeah,
but
extremely disruptive.
Pure muscle.
Yeah,
and just like motor that wouldn't stop.
When you're a fan and you're watching like Minnesota play, and like you could on defense, you could just watch him because it was great to see him like really blow up the offense. People have almost get to the quarterback every time, make a lot of tackles.
Yeah,
he was great.
Yeah, I guess the other notable one is Warren Moon.
Yep.
He set a bunch of records in the CFL as well. So it's possible. Obviously, it's not the majority. It's draft picks are the majority of the best players. But it's the point is with this list, it is possible, and they aren't just contributors. They can be Hall of Fame caliber players. Now, this is just a list of the ones that are like multiple Pro Bowlers. Many of these are Hall of Famers. There's obviously lots who've just contributed, but just didn't make this list. So we're just trying to point out, like, this is the thing. Like if your team, if you haven't bothered to look up the undrafted free agents on your team this year, it's worth a look. And just because at some point this season, for sure, a few players are going to pop and you're going to be sitting there thinking, who's that guy? I never heard of him. And then when you go back and look at the draft, he won't have been drafted on your team. And then when you go through the undrafted list, you're like, oh, that guy was undrafted. But the crazy thing is when you look at their college stats, they were really good.
Yeah.
Like all of the undrafted guys are still really good.
Yeah. And that's a great point too, because that's really going to happen in the preseason, right? So in the preseason games, the first game, like maybe there's some starters in there. Then there's always like games 2 through 3 where it's like you don't recognize anyone, because that's really what they're doing is trying people out and whittling down for the team. And then the starters play maybe a little bit in the last game just to get the reps up, and then before the season starts. So yeah, you're going to see all these names in those games, in those preseason games. So that's a great way to look at it. And so the last thing, just looking back at the ones that were good from the past, right? Like the Antonio Gates and the Harrison is especially. So I was looking through, like, why does this person like not get drafted or whatever? And something that is semi-consistent, I'd say maybe 30 to 40% of the time, is the size. Because everyone had everyone's getting bigger in the NFL. Like you could be a left tackle before and not be 300 pounds. And now everyone pretty much has to be 300 pounds now. So size is a thing. And people have a predetermined height and weight a lot for positions, but as we could see, just because you're undersized doesn't mean you can't be an impact player, which sort of brings us to our first person, I think, which is Kobe Bryant, with the DB for the Falcons picked up. I think he's the knock on him was that he's a little slender, but he was a 3-year all Big 12 conference in a league that like passes the ball around a lot, like that's a lot of experience in there. So that's someone.
He's a 5'4" 40. He's 13 career picks of
whoa, not 5'4". Don't say that.
Sorry, 4'5" 40.
Yeah,
yes, sorry. Yes. Yeah. Sorry, Kobe. 4'5", 4'5", 40. 13 career picks, like 2 or 3 pick sixes. And if you just watched Kansas, okay, so the reason I'm wearing the Kansas shirt is there's actually 3 Jayhawks on this list. He just popped on screen, and he just looked like, okay, so that, as I was watching Kansas throughout the years, okay, so that's a draft pick cornerback is all when I saw him play. And when he didn't get drafted, I couldn't believe it. I was really, he's not within the top 260 play. I just couldn't believe it. And when I bothered to look up his stats, yeah, he's right in there. He's a multiple all Big 12 player, like 3-4 years in a row. It's just, how is this not a guy? So I think the Falcons might have stolen one here in the undrafted market. So we'll see. So if you're a Falcon fan, you might have got a gem here that no one really knew about. At least to me, I think he could be an NFL starter, but we'll see.
No, and you're absolutely, the 3 years in a row, all Big 12. Like it's not like you're getting, at least they're experienced, like that.
Lots of starts,
decent amount of experience, and really one of the only knocks was like the undersized part. Like, and there was another thing too. I think they said they were a little worried about how many penalties he got or something, but that's something that could be fixed, so like it's I don't know, I'm with you. It's surprising.
Look up his highlights. To me, he passes the eye test. He's just got a nose for the ball. He makes big plays at timely moments in games, which you can't, stats don't show that, making a big play at the right time. It's just you can't see it in the stats, but he just seemed to like one of those players. Right. Moving on. Next, Jacksonville running back Jaquindon Jackson. He was on a couple of different teams here. I guess he started at Texas, didn't play. Then he had 3 seasons at Utah. In 2023, he led Utah in rushing. And then in 2024, he was on Arkansas, where he had his best season. He led them 790 yards rushing, 15 TDs. And if you watched Arkansas last year, I mean, this guy was legit. And this is like against SEC defenses. He just looked great. So
and not with a super. The thing that struck me about this one, I think this is another excellent pick that you had here. Utah, when he played there, that's when they struggled with the passing game, and it was just going to be the run game. And so for him to be that productive in that situation, and Arkansas is not significantly different from that. Right. You know what I mean? Especially in 2024, like your defensive plan going against Arkansas would have been stop the run and force them to beat you in the pass. So knowing that they're going to be giving it to him, and he was still that productive, is really saying something in one of the best conferences in college football.
He's big too. I don't know. Just I guess maybe not a lot of people watched Arkansas other than Arkansas fans, but if you go back and look at his highlights, it just looks like he's going to be a legit running back. It seems as though all the tools are there, the size, everything is there. And another theme I really like here is players who've played a lot.
Yes.
So not the Anthony Richardson 13 games and try to learn it on the fly in the NFL, but we're talking like people who have 3 and 4 seasons, 40 or 50 games under their belt, like lots of starts. Like they're battle tested already at this point. So that's the first 2 guys on our list are just like that. Moving on.
Here, hold on. It's my turn now. So and in the same vein as everything you just talked about is Montel Johnson Jr. for the Eagles. So that's another example of played running back for Florida for some time. Sometimes the team was good, sometimes not really, so like offensive line was banged up. So I think that affected his production a bit, but still ran for a lot, still started a lot of games. Like you're getting an experienced person, like you said, 4.40, which is for a running back of that size is impressive. So again, I think the Eagles, I think that is a fantastic sleeper running back. Like it's always good to have extra running backs. Because people get injured all the time. You can rotate through them. They're going to be on special teams. So I think that's someone that could make a significant impact for them.
Yeah. 49 games played, 33 TDs. Like that's that's legit. Like that's legit experience. He's got the size, he's got the
212, speed. Like it's the perfect NFL size person. Like it's not an undersized thing that we talked about before. Like he's a legit NFL size back. So, and
if you watch the tape, it's just, he passes the eye test. Just like, again, a lot of these, I scanned all the undrafted free agents. Obviously there's lots, there's 300 or 400 this year. And I just looked at the ones that popped off. Like when I saw their name in the list, I thought, oh my God, I remember watching that guy. He was great.
Mhm.
How is he an undrafted? There's obviously lots that I'm not aware of,
Mhm.
but these are the ones that popped off the pop for me when I watched them this past year. So I'll go to the Kansas City Chiefs with wide receiver, staying with the Gators, wide receiver Elijah Badger, another 4.4 40 player, led the team with 800 receiving yards, 4 TDs, and second in the FBS with 20.7 yards per reception. That's big. Like that's big. So this is a big play type wide receiver. And he was one of their go-to players on that team. It was like one of the best receivers on a good team in the SEC up against the most brutal schedule last year. So I could see how he could make it in the NFL. It's just he was really productive. He's got the size, he's got the speed. So this could be for the Chiefs. It could be a gem of a pick that no one's really talking about.
Yeah, this is so next one. This one also fits in sort of what you're talking about. Like, I'm not going to compare him to Wes Welker, but in terms of like an undersized and wide receiver, but I think the Xavier Restrepo that the Tennessee Titans got, I think is fantastic. They're going to need more weapons for Cam Ward. He played with them at Miami. Like they're already going to have somewhat of a rapport, and that type of undersized slot receiver, with a lot of experience. He played all like the last 4 years. First team All-American, first team ACC, and that's another example too in Miami where he was getting the ball and still had over 1,000 yards of season. So I think that one's going to be. I think that's I'll be shocked if he doesn't get some time this year on the field with the Titans.
Yeah, I think Ward talked them into this one too.
Oh, really?
I think I saw an article somewhere where when the Titans were signing undrafted free agents, Ward kind of said, hey, you got to give Restrepo a shot. So who knows probably didn't pay him much, but they, like you said, they have rapport, and it was, again, past the eye test. If you watch them, if they needed it on third down, Restrepo's likely getting it.
Yeah.
And he's likely being targeted, and he's likely going to catch it, and he's likely going to get the yards.
Yeah. And how many people were like that, like in the NFL? Like there's always that is a real need in the NFL, like your go-to third down receiver, like like
Hunter Renfrow.
Yes, like you need the 6 yards, and the guy runs the 7-yard pattern, and you know what I mean. So yeah, that's for sure.
Well, I'll stay in that theme. Chargers picked up Luke Grimm, another Jayhawk, and he fits that same Restrepo mold. He's a slot receiver. He's not huge, but he's got sticky hands. He runs sharp routes. He's 4th all time on Kansas Jayhawks reception list, 3rd most in yards, 2,400 yards. 2nd in career TDs at Kansas at 23. And he was their most reliable third down receiver all last year. He was just that guy, just like Restrepo. These guys are the versions of Hunter Renfrow, as it were. And if you watched Kansas at all, you just knew third down, Grimm was getting it. He's going to be open, and he's going to catch it. So he's another one of these guys that if it works out, I could see the Chargers having a pretty good receiver room with how much of a revelation Ladd McConkey already is. And then now you have another guy who could potentially be a really sticky hands third down kind of slot specialist here. So again, we don't know if this is going to work because there's obviously lots of good receivers that obviously went in the draft as well. But again, he pops on film. If you watched any Kansas, you're like, who is this Grimm guy? How he catches everything. Yeah. So this is another one.
Yeah. I'm going off the board for my next one. This was because I know we watched a lot of the 49ers stuff too, and their defensive line was really banged up last year. So they got a defensive tackle. They signed undrafted free agent Sebastian Valdez from Washington. Is a senior, started many years, 6'3", 301 pounds. In terms of his draft stock, they said the strengths was like he's powerful upper body, as it plays with leverage and as a firm anchor. And then some of the weaknesses were his explosiveness off the snap, which I don't know why you'd need that for a 300-pound defensive tackle, but whatever. And it's but anyway, so I think that you can never have enough. Rotating defensive linemen is important. They've had a lot of injuries in that, in the defensive line. And again, I'll be surprised if he doesn't get some time this year. because you always need the big people up front to try and stop the run. And, they're not exactly, I don't want to say thin at that position, but they were last year. So I think that was a great call for them.
They have very little. They need so much new talent on the line there.
They're the one I'm surprised the Niners, if you're a Niners fan, they only had 7 undrafted free agents, which is like one of the lowest numbers out of all the teams. So that was a little surprising.
Yeah, I think the Ravens were the most, right?
From what I could tell,
for sure.
And that's just from the quick scan. The Seattle's up there too.
All right. Okay. Well, how about we go over to Vegas? They took a wide receiver, Zachary Franklin from Illinois. Again, if you watched Illinois, he was their best receiver this past year. He was catching everything, like sticky hands. Another guy who's got a lot of games played. So he was at UTSA for more of his career. I think he only played his last season with Illinois, and he set the UTSA receiving record. Then he broke his own record the very next year. So, I mean, this guy, again, a lot of snaps, lots of catches, 4,000 career yards, 42 career TDs, 12.6 yards career yards per reception for his career. And it just passes the eye test. Another guy that passes the eye test, did it in 2 different conferences. So I wouldn't be surprised if Vegas has another good one here. I could be wrong, but if you watched any of Illinois, and Illinois was good this year, they won 10 games.
Really good. And
if you just review Illinois, by the end of watching all of Illinois' 2024 highlights, you would say, well, Franklin's clearly one of their best players. And yet he never got drafted. But, this we don't know if any of these guys are going to work, but this is just our list of guys who passed the eye test, have the stats, have lots of games, and just seem like there could be one of these guys that end up on a list in the future where everyone's like, that guy was undrafted. So, Franklin, look out for Zachary Franklin at the Raiders.
Just to clear up the last point we had, Seattle had 25 undrafted free agents. Now they've already released 2 and waived another 2. So like they already waived 4, but like that was a huge list.
Yeah.
Like every position.
That's a lot of work to evaluate all that too, right? So
yeah.
All right, what do you got?
That was it for me. Did you have any others that you wanted to cover?
Yeah, I got a few here. I guess circling back to the Niners, Isaiah Nair, he really fast receiver, played at Wyoming, just like was on Texas, but never really saw the field, got an ACL injury, and then finished his career at Nebraska, led the team with 5 receiving TDs, played in all 12 games. So he's got multiple years of experience. He's really fast, and he was the leading receiver on a team that, limited offense, but still the best receiver on that team in a Big Ten, in the Big Ten conference. And he kind of popped, again, passing the eye test. Everyone's on this list just because I remember them playing well.
Yeah. And
then they just never got drafted. So they are thin at receiver right now. So who knows? I mean, he might pop for the Niners.
Yeah. And that's a great example of someone that fits in terms of when you look at those past NFL players that were undrafted that ended up being successful. This guy sort of fits in that too, like largely not recruited a lot, like ended up going to Wyoming, but did really well. Then went to like a big time school, got injured, but then went to like, still a Nebraska's a school, like a significant, and played well there in his 9 starts, So, and the other key thing that separates him from other people is that his size. He's 6'4", 218 and a run of 4.40. Like he's got the measurables.
Rare.
Yeah, he's got the measurables, right? So like that's, and he was he was lightly recruited at the beginning. He had an injury. So like there's, he potentially could make an impact. Like, and it's not just because he was been injured and he hasn't had an opportunity to do that so far. So
to consistently show up.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
he might pop for them. Circling back to the Chiefs, they took tight end Jake Brenningstrel from Clemson. He set the Clemson school record for receptions by a tight end.
Yeah.
So 127 career receptions, 1,380 career yards, 17 TDs. He's one of Sweeney's favorite players. He kind of just does everything right, coachable, that sort of guy. He's got the body for it. I mean, you're not going to compare him to Brock Bowers or anything, but he could be a regular NFL starter that people just didn't really notice because he never got drafted.
And that was on a team that had some really strong wide receiver prospects, like when Clemson. So it's not like he's the was like, it was the only one who could catch the ball. Kind of not like the Penn
Yeah.
State tight end, you know, like where
Mhm.
he was the main receiving threat. Like
Yeah.
there was good wide receivers at Clemson, and he was still that good of a productivity. And no, and the quarterback play was sort of up and down. It was Cade Klubnik in the one year
Yeah.
was like not good, and then
Mhm.
has played better more recently. But so to do it in that setup is really that, you know, that is like a Brock Bowers comparison, where Brock Bowers like
Mhm.
led the NFL in receptions for the Raiders and like didn't have the best team behind him. You know what I mean? So anyway, I just think that that's a great call, and I think that and the character thing means something when you
Yeah.
go into a good team, you know, and it's not too much is put on you, and you can fit in well like that. There's a lot of layers to that. Like that's someone who's being really put in a position to be successful, I think.
Totally.
So
And
yeah.
that's actually a good point, because the tight end before him, who was the starter, his name escapes me, but I think he's on the Rams. He's a regular starter now in the NFL as
Kelsey.
well. No, no, no. No, from Clemson, right?
Yeah.
So he's a regular starter. So it could be that they're just good at developing tight ends. I don't know. We'll see. Now that the guy before him got drafted, but to me, watching Clemson, these guys looked. Okay, he's just picking up where the last guy left off. They just
Yep.
sort of look similar. So if that's the case, he could have a legitimate shot at making the team here. I got a couple more, and
Keep
then
going.
we'll finish off here. All right. So going back to the Raiders and sticking with the Jayhawks theme, cornerback Mello Dotson, the other cornerback. Again, they for the last 3 years, Kansas looked like they had the best, or they were in the top 10 for like cornerback duos. And we've already talked about Kobe Bryant, but on the other side was Mello Dotson. He has 12 career picks for Kansas. And a Kansas record 4 pick sixes. And he was a third team All-American, AP All-American in 2024. Again, if you're a Jayhawk fan, you're probably nodding your head saying, yeah, how on earth did this guy not get drafted? Like these guys looked like two of the best corners in the country.
Yeah. The main reason would have been the combine, because he ran a 4.59 40, which is like going to be concerning for a defensive back.
Right.
But other than that, everything else is there, right? Like on the field, excellent play, great coverage, great ball skills, which is something that you can't coach. And the size is a prototypical defensive back of the NFL. He's 6'1", 192. It's like perfect. So everything's there. They're concerned about the speed, but so, you know, that, but again, like that's like, you know,
also some people just run a bad 40.
Yeah,
sometimes it's just that they're just not good at it, because running a 40 is a skill. It's like its own skill.
It is. That's why you always hear that when people are like, I'm just preparing for the draft now. Like, because that's why, like, all that stuff you got to really work on. So, all
right, I got 2 more. Chargers took running back Rocket Sanders from South Carolina. Second team All ACC last year, led the team with 880 yards rushing, 11 rushing TDs. Named one of 3 national comeback players of the year. I think he came back from an injury. So he also has a lot of experience. He was on Arkansas before South Carolina, so he's played a lot. And he popped if you watched him at South Carolina. Like he was part of the reason they were so successful this past year. And that was a very limited offense with a lousy offensive line and almost no passing game to speak of. So it was him and Sellers the whole time. And this guy was just a productive player in you know, if we're going to say the SEC, he was up against tough defenses all the time. So, I mean,
that second year at Arkansas before he got injured was crazy. It was 1,400 yards rushing, which is like 6.5 rush, like yards per rush. And that was elite level running back. And he would have been drafted higher if that kept going. But the injury sort of derailed him in the next year. But like, again, it's, you know, he came back from it and was productive at 2024 on a team, like you said, that didn't exactly have a dynamic passing attack, because Lenore Sellers is excellent, but he runs around a bit and then makes something happen, as opposed to, you know, they can really load up for the run on that, I think, with them. So, but anyway, that was, I think that's a same thing. Passes the eye test, looks good.
I guess in these skill positions, if anywhere in their college career they had a knee injury or some injury that could affect their speed and their lateral movement, and took them out of half of a season here, that I could see how they, you know, there's a lot of running backs. Why take a risk on this guy? But as an undrafted free, it's not a risk here.
No, exactly.
So,
Zero risk.
And his style fits with what Harbaugh wants to do. So we'll see. We'll see if he can make that room. And last guy I got here, Ja'Cory Brooks, the Commanders. He signed Ja'Cory Brooks from the Louisville Cardinals. Same thing. He was actually a 5-star recruit. This is another guy that was highly touted. He had a lingering shoulder injury in 2003. And is he going to put this thing together? He spent 3 years with Alabama and he didn't see the field as much as he probably hoped to. But in 2024, he was a first team All ACC, led the Cardinals with 61 receptions, 1,000 yards receiving, 9 receiving TDs, 16.6 yards per reception. And I remember throughout the season when we covered and did our like weekly reviews, I remember saying the receivers at Louisville are each week are good for one wow play. And it was always either Brooks, I can't remember the other guy's name, but every week they had a play where oh my God, you got to go see what was going on at Louisville, because one of these two guys would have like just a wow play for the week. And so he's got the physical tools. He's had a couple of things get in his way, but last year he seemed to put it all together. So we'll see. Could be a good one there too.
And one of the strengths that they have listed for his combine thing was that he's really good, like fighting for the ball, like a 50-50 ball
contested
guy. Like
catches,
contested catches. He's very good with that, which is going to be really, that's another thing. Like, I don't think you can coach. Like you're either good at, it's like ball skills for a defensive back. Like you're either good at that or you're not. And so that's great. Again, his speed isn't amazing, but this is something about like you said, you derailed by injuries, and he was a 5-star recruit back then, like when you're out of high school, which is a really big deal. It's like physically, he's always been there, but it's just hasn't, struggled with the injury, a couple of different, I think the situation in Alabama, they were loaded at wide receivers back there too. Like he would have sat behind like Ruggs and the
different guys there.
So like that would have been, Devontae Smith. So, that's a good example of someone that like might not have been in a good position at university, and now it's going to be, has a chance to do something good in the NFL. And you're right. Like they need who'd tell me that the quarterback for Washington is not happy that this guy's now like an option to throw to. It's 6'2", 184, like so
yeah. Especially if McLaurin's not going to. If they're not going to sign McLaurin, they're going to need all the help they can get in the wide receiver room there.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's the list. Those are just the guys we think might pop. I'm sure there's others that will pop, but those are the ones that we think have a chance.
Yeah, way more people undrafted free agents than you would think. I didn't, as an average NFL fan, I didn't know that it was that many, like so many more undrafted people get signed than who are drafted, which is crazy. So it almost, I don't want to say that it's undrafted free agents are more important than the draft, but like it is, like it makes up more of the personnel in the team than the drafted people. Like right now, you know what I mean? Your incoming draft class, at least.
It really matters if your personnel department knows how to evaluate that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I think that's a good place to leave this one.
Yep.
All right. So for Geoff Dover, I'm John Barban, and that's your Saturday versus Sunday podcast.